Welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week I have a great panel, as usual, but also we have a very difficult task ahead for them today. We're going to be discussing, is there any way forward on Indo-Pak peace talks, especially after the recent talks have been called off. I have with me Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, and Mr. Sibal is of the opinion that sterile dialogue such as this doesn't really lead to anything, so it doesn't really matter if the talks have been called off. I have Manish Tiwari, who is former UPM Minister for INB. Veer Sanghvi in his book has Band-Aid with Destiny, in fact wrote that there was maybe a solution that Manmohan Singh and Musharraf had hammered. We're going to ask him more on that later. And of course, Sudhanshu Trivedi, he's the BJP national spokesperson. Veer, I'm going to begin with you. You wrote about this Manmohan-Musharraf deal that was worked about, I think in 2007. Musharraf came up with some 4-point formula or something. Could you tell us more about that and why it didn't work out?
Well, that deal has never been officially announced, so I'm sure everybody on this table knows what I'm talking about. From what we understand, essentially it was demilitarization of Kashmir, soft borders, and some kind of utopian situation. I was never convinced, even when Manmohan Singh thought he had solved the Kashmir problem, that this deal could go through. Apart from anything else, I was never convinced that Musharraf could sell it to the Pakistani people. It was easy to see what we would gain. If there was no militancy in the valley, if Kashmir ceased to be an international issue, then obviously we had something to gain. But what would Pakistan, which had invested so much in the Kashmir dispute, gain from this kind of settlement? It had told its people that it would bring Kashmir back, liberate it. This was hardly going to be a liberation. So when the deal fell through, I was not surprised.
Sudhanshu, what is the way forward really, with you've called off the talks and Pakistan is not going to bend down either. So what's going to happen now? Now it's really left to the Modi and Nawaz Sharif chemistry.
Actually, in all the diplomatic efforts, it's not always that at one step or one point of time you achieve everything. Even if some of our opponents may be saying that...
You've been accused of a flip-flop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of our opponents may be accusing us that we are unable to get a breakthrough and we are a little bit immature. But what I want to say, if you go back in 2001 in Agra summit, what was the stand of General Musharraf? That we will discuss first Kashmir. And we were saying, no, first we should discuss the other things. And the talk failed. Finally, in 2004, in January 2004, in Lahore Declaration, General Musharraf himself said that Pakistan and India can discuss other subjects apart from Kashmir. This was the first time. So, in a way, after a certain time, we managed to get a breakthrough. In the same manner, in these incidents, first we withdrew talks last year in August on Hurriyat issue. Again on the same issue. It means that we are making the Pakistan and the international community realize that Pakistan is consistently trying to bring a third party, and this is going to be the main stumbling block. So, in our opinion, in long run, definitely on a strategic positioning, we will be succeeding in a positive direction.
Are you as hopeful, Manish, that they will succeed in the long run with this kind of attitude?
No, first let me respond to what Veer said. You see, in 2007, it is correct that there was a breakthrough between President Musharraf and former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. Why the deal fell through was primarily because President Musharraf ran into domestic difficulties. I tend to agree with what Veer says. Whether ultimately President Musharraf would have been able to sell it to Pakistan or Pakistani public opinion remains a $1 million question. But coming back to the current situation, I think UFA was an ambush laid by Pakistan, and this government walked into it head first. You see, what were the Pakistanis looking for? The Pakistanis wanted a change in the India government's position from no talks till terror abates to talking about terror. So the moment they got that equivalence in UFA, they had nothing more to gain from it. And so the moment UFA ended, you found Sartaj Aziz, almost the second or third day, distancing himself from the whole UFA process. Then you had the Pakistani finance minister rubbishing it in the Senate. So therefore, this government should have anticipated what was going to happen and possibly called off the talks earlier. Because if you rewind back to the 26th of May, when the government was sworn in, they invited Nawaz Sharif. After that, they called off the talks on the Hurriyat issue. Then they sent the foreign secretary in a spin, ultimately landing up in Islamabad to re-begin the dialogue. Then they asked for a meeting in UFA. So therefore, there is a lack of consistency. And that lack of consistency, I'm afraid, sends a signal to your interlocutors in Pakistan that you are possibly not very mature.
Sudhanshu, I know you want to come in, but I'll get Mr. Civil in first. Do you agree with Manish saying that we walked into an ambush at UFA?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think?
Now, one can always question the reasons why Prime Minister Modi wanted to reach out to Nawaz Sharif. I don't think that a proper atmosphere had been created for any productive dialogue with Pakistan, because if you look at the statements of Nawaz Sharif himself, ever since he took over, these are very hardline statements. His speech at the UN General Assembly last year, when I compared it to speeches by previous presidents, it was actually much tougher. He's never mentioned the Simla Agreement. Look at his statements. Right from day one, he said he'll bring Kashmir to the front burner. So he has been making negative statements right through. Yet there is some belief that Nawaz Sharif is well inclined and we can do business with him, and there's an attempt to make a divide between the military establishment and the civilian establishment. Let me go back a little bit to say that everybody thought he's a businessman, he understands business, he wants to open business dealings between the two countries. He's not been able to give not only what they call MFN, but this non-discriminatory market access, etc., etc. But yet, one can't really fault the government to try and resume some kind of context with dialogue and see if some kind of forward movement is possible. Now, there it was very clear, and if you look at the UFA declaration, that the NSA level talks would be confined only to the issue connected with terrorism. So for Sartaj Aziz to say that Kashmir is on the agenda, or Kashmir should be brought back on the agenda, or India is laying preconditions,
So Manish
is absolute
is right
nonsense.
when he said that they distanced
It's absolute
himself
nonsense.
immediately after
Because
the
after NSA talks, there will be DGMO talks, BSF, DG, etc., and then some other steps on the humanitarian side. The NSA level talks were only for terrorism, and therefore the government was absolutely right in making this point. And secondly, since there was not going to be any talks on Kashmir, why bring the Hurriyat in? And therefore, I think the government was absolutely right in saying that you're trying to provoke us unnecessarily, and you're trying to humiliate us by forcing us to reverse our previous decision of not allowing these contacts. And I think the government actually showed some dignity and firmness in rejecting this.
We're going back, also the Vajpayee. Vajpayee had two attempts to make peace. One was at Lahore with Nawaz Sharif and Musharraf in Agra. What I've told that nearly a breakthrough happened with Musharraf also, but this was again last minute. There was some, some sabotage in the talks.
Actually, I've never bought that theory. I mean, the Lahore bus trip I thought was a nice gesture, full of goodwill, but ultimately meaningless and mistaken. The Agra summit, I thought from the beginning, and I said so at the time, was a huge, huge mistake. We had stopped talking to Pakistan. We'd taken the same until terror abates, we will not talk to you position. When the government, apparently at Mr. Advani's urging or so, he says, suddenly reversed this policy and said, let's have a summit in Agra. Now, Mr. Sybil will tell you that generally when leaders sit down for a summit, this is a formality. A lot of the stuff has been done, the work has been done before. You know what's going to be agreed on. I'm not sure that happened with Agra. And the mythology that's then now been developed, which is that there was no problem and the two leaders were on the same page, and the document was leaked to Mr. Advani and he read it with tears in his eyes and his patriotic sentiments came to the fore and he said, I will not allow this to pass, is, I think, mythology. I don't think it could have worked anyway.
What's going to work now? Now it's really left to Modi and Nawaz Sharif, as I asked you earlier. Are they going to meet at the UN? Is he going to go to SAARC as planned?
What I said in my first statement, and I also totally disagree with what Manish was saying.
Yes, I could hear you, see you shaking your head all through, Mr. Sybil, also you were disagreeing with Manish.
In my opinion, the UFA was a very astute diplomatic skill shown by our government.
All right.
Number one, we have shown the world that we are ready for dialogue without entering into an official bilateral dialogue. And that too at the level of Prime Minister. Second thing, we got Pakistan for the first time to enter into an agreement of talks, strictly in black and white, that they are ready to talk on terror. And that too at the level of the Prime Minister. So it shows that for the first time, Pakistan agreed to talk specifically on terror, even at the NSA level. So when they started withdrawing it, in my opinion, they were losing the international opinion in their favor. And this I would like to back by a fact. If in UAE, the Prime Minister of India is having the capability and audacity to say that there cannot be good Taliban or bad Taliban, in the backdrop of the Taliban government was recognized by only 3 countries, Pakistan, Saudi Arab and UAE. So if at the soil of UAE, the Prime Minister of India is getting support on the issue of terror, and Pakistan writing in black and white in UFA and withdrawing towards Delhi, in my opinion, we have succeeded for some positive things in the long run.
Manish, what is the way forward, Manish, really? How do we...
Well, you see, the fact is that every Prime Minister from Mr. Rajiv Gandhi onwards has tried to engage with Pakistan. And the reality is that the engagement has not worked. Now, how do you find a new template for a dialogue with Pakistan? The difficulty is that this government may have tried to explore a new template, but again, it has not worked. Because if again you go back to Sartaj Aziz's statement, what did he start off by saying? That the UFA joint statement is non-binding. In other words, they said that whatever has been agreed is an informal agreement and it does not bind Pakistan at all. So therefore, it is really for this government now to discern the way forward. Insofar as I am concerned, you see, the only thing which we expect that Pakistan should not do is export terror. We are not interested in trade and transit really. We are not interested in a most favored nation status really. We don't want sugar and potatoes and textiles. All that we want is that there should be no export of terror. So therefore, if the government has taken a position, it should stick to that position and take it to a logical conclusion that till the time terror does not abate, dialogue will not be resumed. And on an interesting aside, if you go back to Agra, the person who really stood up and torpedoed the Agra process was the then Information and Broadcasting Minister Sushma Swaraj. And the person who torpedoed UFA was again Sushma Swaraj. In fact, I could discern a vicarious pleasure that she was taking in that press conference, rubbishing not only the National Security Advisor, but possibly her own Foreign Secretary, who was seen to be engaging, directly at the instance of the PMO.
Before I bring you in, we had a quick thing on Sushma. Do you agree that she's the villain of this piece?
No, I'm not going to take this to the level of personalities. I have a slightly different opinion. I believe, and I agree completely with Manish, that we have engaged Pakistan with varying degrees of sincerity and nothing has happened. It seems to me that we are sticking to a 20th century idea of diplomacy. There's now a 21st century idea of diplomacy. If you look at how the Americans engage Pakistan, they're quite willing to talk to Pakistan. But when it comes to terror, either the Pakistanis put hoods over the guys they want and send them off on renditions to Guantanamo Bay, or the Americans kill them with drone strikes. If you look at how Pakistan deals with India, at one level there are conversations, and Sartaj Aziz appears in Indian news channels and says what a nice chap he is, and our anchors say what a wonderful Punjabi chap he is, spirit of Lahore, etc. And at the other level, they send terrorists in to create mayhem and wreak havoc on India. So in a sense, both have a two-tier strategy. One is dialogue, the other is covert operations. For the Americans, it's drone strikes. For the Pakistanis, it's terror attacks. We are still playing this game by the old rules. The only way, in my view, to really take on Pakistan is to back up our diplomacy with covert attacks. I mean, I ask you a basic question. If Dawood Ibrahim had killed over 200 people in a terror strike in America in 1993, would he still be alive? He is alive, he's living in luxury, and the best we can do is leak a grainy passport photo of him. I mean, come on, what kind of power are we?
Fair enough. Mr. Sibal, is there, what is the new template, and will this good old Punjabi spirit ever overcome all these hostilities at the border?
I think the
What
ball
would
is,
it take?
ball is in Pakistan's court. They are better armed in their diplomacy vis-a-vis us than we are. They have two fundamental tools that they use. One is territorial claims on India, other is terrorism. We have no territorial claims on them, and we don't use terrorism. So what do? Our only response so far has been, for all these years, is let's talk. No, let's talk. And we have initiated these dialogues. And Pakistan has not moved an inch on what they want in Kashmir and what they want through this dialogue. And they're still at it, that Kashmir, there has to be self-determination. They're going back to the UN resolutions. They want part of Jammu and Kashmir. So unless Pakistan itself realizes that they have come to a situation where they have no option but to genuinely this time reach out to India and in a spirit of compromise, then yes, then things can move forward.
Well, we need to take a short break, but don't go away. As you can see, we're having a very interesting discussion here, so please come back. Welcome back. This is a roundtable on Indo-Pak talks. Can we go any further? What next after the talks have failed? You know, Sudhanshu, one more thing. Every prime minister until Manmohan had this dream of, achieving peace with Pakistan, the Nobel Prize for it. But Manmohan seems to look beyond it. His vision seems to be, I think, he's looking beyond Pakistan. Sorry, Modi. Is that right?
When you say beyond it, then where the limit stands? If it is going to be at the cost of national security, national integrity, and national pride, so whatever was happened in Havana and Sharm el-Sheikh, it has given an alibi to Pakistan that they themselves are the victim of terror. I would like to start from what Mr. Veer Sanghvi has said, that we are a country. The problem of terrorism is very much there in most of the part of the world. But we are the only country in which the smaller nation and less powerful nation is creating trouble for us. We are more powerful and a bigger nation. Because of certain policies over the decades, and also some support of terrorism because of the domestic political consideration, which has created a situation that despite winning 3 decisive wars, we are unable to solve the problem, which I would like to comprehend in one line, कि ये सुलह की शक्ल को सवारते रहे, जीतने के बाद बाजी हारते रहे. So this was the substance of our policy towards Pakistan in the last 60 years. And as far as Sushma Swaraj's stand were concerned, I would like to say that it was her stand. Just one sentence. When it was asked, कि भाई वो तो सबूत देंगे, तो उन्होंने कहा हम तो जिंदा इंसान खड़ा कर देंगे. In my opinion, after this statement and comment, I don't think Pakistan was having the courage to come and face that zinda insan.
Manish, you want to come?
Well, you see, Havana has been criticized a lot. Now, what did India do in Havana? Essentially, we agreed to a dialogue at the level of additional secretaries on the question of terror. What did the NDA do in UFA? They upgraded that dialogue from the additional secretary level to the NSA level. So therefore, those people who are claiming credit for UFA and rubbishing Havana, they should just go and read both the documents. Number 2, I completely disagree with this mythology that we had more to lose by bringing Balochistan into the Sharm el-Sheikh document. In fact, what Pakistan has been doing in Balochistan, the killing of Bukti, the disappearance of thousands of Balochi activists, if Balochistan would have been discussed in the sunlight of international opinion, Pakistan would have more to lose. And number 3, you see, ultimately, if you wanted to talk at each other, rather than talk to each other, if you had Sartaaj Aziz and Sushma Swaraj indulging in a verbal kabaddi, then why did you go and seek the dialogue in UFA? Pakistan never sought it. In fact, if you would see Nawaz Sharif's face on that particular day, he had the most constipated expression on his face, as if he was being pulled to the dialogue, kicking and screaming.
Okay, he wants to come in quickly, then I'll come to you.
On the issue of his sarcasm of the verbal kabaddi, definitely it is not that type of kabaddi which was there in the UPA government when the Home Minister Sushil Kumar Shinde was using the phrase Hindu terror here in India and getting applaud from Hafiz Saeed from Lahore. And even when our soldiers were beheaded, Mr. A.K. Antony on the floor of House was refraining to say that this was Pakistan Army. They were saying some intruders in the disguise of Pakistan Army has done this. Then after so much of uproar in Parliament, he has to accept this was Pakistan Army. So if you look at the statements and the level of statements at that time and this time what is happening? The defense minister of Pakistan is saying India is doing too much. At that time what was saying? The terrorists from there were putting something, thumping back of Home Minister. So the situation is in stark contrast with UPA government.
What do you make of all this political kabaddi?
Well, look, that's going to happen. Both sides are going to keep saying you did this right, you did this wrong. But I don't think it changes the larger objective. The larger objective is India wants an end to terror emanating from Pakistan. Manish is absolutely right. We don't want their sugar, we don't want their potatoes. We have very limited ambitions. That's all we want. It is the responsibility of every government to try and reduce the terror because that's what we elect our prime ministers to do. So you can't fault them for trying, so you can disagree with their strategy. My problem, as I said, is more fundamental. I think it's time to look beyond pure diplomacy.
Mr. Sibal, which Prime Minister do you think has, done the most, or where we've been really close to peace with Pakistan in the past?
I don't think we can single out any point in time where we were close to peace. We never been
Nearly close to peace.
Never. And this business about...
71.
71?
71 is the last time we were close to peace.
This I don't know, because we yielded a lot. We released the 3,000 prisoners of war. And frankly, if you look at the Simla agreement, why the hell, sorry for the language, did we have Article 6, which says that the Kashmir issue is still to be finalized? It didn't make any sense at all. We should have settled the Kashmir issue. I don't know what was in the mind of Mrs. Gandhi and her advisors when they agreed to put in this phrase. But leave that aside. This 4-point formula, this and that, couple of things. One, that Pakistan itself very quickly reneged on it and said there's nothing like that. Zardari government and the Gilani government said it doesn't exist. When on track 2, we wanted to engage the Pakistanis on this. They said, we don't know. There are no records, no papers. Nothing of this kind actually was agreed upon. And the present government itself is saying the same thing. They're not referring to the 4-point formula of General Musharraf. And given the history of relationship between Nawaz Sharif and General Musharraf, I doubt whether he'll pick up the formula that General Musharraf was advocating to us. And finally, I would say that that so-called formula, the intention in General Musharraf's mind was actually to somehow make India move from the fundamental position that the issue of sovereignty of Jammu and Kashmir is settled once and for all. And the only issue that remains to be settled is Pakistan's illegal occupation of P&K. So once we started talking about demilitarization and some form of joint administration, etc., he would have succeeded in moving India from that fundamental position, and that would have opened up the breach. Soft borders, this and that, and we would have lost control over Jammu and Kashmir even more.
I'll bring Manish in for the last word. Manish, in your view, what do you have a formula in mind?
Well, ultimately, if you really go back to the United Nations resolutions, that is what we had agreed to. India had agreed to a plebiscite. We had said that, first of all, Pakistan needs to withdraw its forces from the occupied Kashmir and from Gilgit and Baltistan. And then India would withdraw, and ultimately a plebiscite would take place. Yes, we have moved from that position over a period of time to a situation where in 94 and 2013, there's a unanimous resolution of Parliament which says that the only unfinished business of partition is the reclaim of POK and the other occupied territories. So I think going forward, what this government really needs to do is, if they've taken a position, hold to that position and not do these repeated flip-flops and somersaults, which absolutely not only embarrasses the country, but undermines national security.
Okay,
half a sentence. The presence of Chinese troops, the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Project, etc., is in direct violation of the UN resolutions, and we should say that.
Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah.
Well, as you can see, peace with Pakistan will take a lot more than this half an hour. But from us, that's all this week. Thank you for watching this roundtable. We'll see you again, same time next week.